Your gut feelings are not a good growth strategy, but we'll tell you what is on the Church Revitalization Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malphurs Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and A.J. Mathieu.
Welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast. My name is Scott Ball. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, A.J. Mathieu.
Let's go.
Man, dear listener, if you only knew that this is the third time we've tried to get this episode off the ground today.
Hey, tech problems happen, but we're dedicated.
Oh my
We are
gosh.
dedicated.
Yeah, we are. And you know what? Maybe this is an important topic. Maybe the old enemy doesn't want us to talk about why it's important to not just trust your gut.
Yeah. Our
Yeah,
battles are not against technology, but of evil forces in the heavenly realms.
I think that when it comes to making decisions, that there's this spectrum, right? Like on one side, it's like we're robots and, we must make decisions only based on data,
Mm-hmm.
and then on this other end of the spectrum, you've maybe got some pastors who are like, listen, I'm just waiting for the Holy Spirit to paint something in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't see it or I don't sense it, then it ain't from the Lord, and I ain't doing it. And the thing is that sometimes some spirit-led discernment is actually just confirmation bias dressed up as discernment.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the Holy Spirit is anti-data. Given that he is the Lord of data, he is the Lord of the universe, he created all of the rules of physics and time and space and all of this. I don't think he's against data. But I don't think that you should make all of your decisions based on data alone either. Like, so there's definitely a role here between discerning the movement of the Holy Spirit and paying attention to actual real information and making decisions based on that. It doesn't have to be one or the other, but I know that a lot of pastors kind of tend towards just leading with their gut. And so today we want to explore why, if that's you, if it's all just like I'm winging it and it's all just based on what I'm sensing in the moment, what are maybe some problems associated with that? And then what are maybe some good questions that you can start to ask yourself? So I don't want you to think in terms of extremes today. We're not saying it's got to be all one way or the other, that there's a happy medium, and we're trying to maybe strike that balance.
Yeah. At the end of the day, you do want good information for making good decisions in your church. And a way that you can do that is utilizing the church ministry analysis service from the Malphurs Group. And we have a really special offer happening right now. It's running until Labor Day here in the U.S., first week of September, whatever date that might be. But you still have plenty of time to take advantage of it. It's only $9.99 to get the church ministry analysis. Normally, that's a $99 service that we do. Comes with 3 months of the Healthy Churches Toolkit because it's run through there. That's where your data collection will happen. That's where your report will be provided. But it also pairs you up with a guide who is going to walk with you through it and compile your report for you. So it's a really amazing service. Provides a lot of good information back to your church for making good decisions. And that's what we're talking about today, Scott. Not trusting your gut.
You could trust your gut and go, you know what?
Compare your gut with the data. How about that?
Yeah. $10.
Here's how you get it. I forgot to say how to get it. Malphursgroup.com/CMA90. Charlie Mike Alpha 900.
That's it.
There you go.
Malphursgroup.com. Spell Malphurs out.
Wow, you want to
Go for it.
Mike
Go for it.
Alpha Lima Papa Hotel Uniform Romeo Sierra Malphurs.
There you go.
Yeah.
You got it. Golf Romeo. I don't know. Othello? I don't know. What's the O?
Oscar.
Oscar. There you go.
Uniform Papa. Okay.
I think it should be Othello. Let's go for that. Can you submit that to the FAA?
Yeah. All right. Gut feeling. Yeah. So we want to marry impressions. We want to marry leading of the Holy Spirit with some empirical information that we can confirm one way or the other. We just want good decision-making points, because we're making big, important decisions in the church as church leaders.
Yeah.
And too many churches are operating on the gut feeling kind of thing, the impression that I get of something. And we want to be able to marry these things together. So, Scott, the first problem is the anecdote as data. We get one piece of information. Somebody reports something, could be hearsay, could be a few people maybe that came up and said, "Oh, well, that's interesting." Kind of like that idea that you talked about, or here's a problem that's been going on in our life groups.
Yeah.
And a couple people tell you something, you're like, "Oh boy, wow, we have a problem in our life groups." Well, do we? Or I don't know if we do. And so we want to break out of the anecdote as data. I love what you said, Scott, before we hit go the first time we tried to record this episode, but that data is the plural of anecdote. We have many anecdotes now that have come together to reveal data.
Yeah.
And that's what we've got to be driving towards.
Yeah, I don't know who said that originally, but I've heard that before, and I thought, that's good. Data is the plural of anecdote. But, I think that what can happen is we hear a couple of people say, "Hey, we ought to do XYZ thing," and then go, "Wow, yeah, people are saying." And this can be in the negative, too. This isn't working. 3 people complained about this. Therefore, it didn't work, or people hate it, or whatever. And so we tend to confuse what is loud with what is true. And so sometimes we can't really discern what's right and what's good and what's healthy for our church, because we're listening too closely to certain voices that may not actually represent what's actually happening. And so you need other ways of measuring things that are more reliable than the loudest voices, or the ones you like to hear, or the ones you're most afraid of. And letting those voices control your decision making, which is very, very common.
Yeah. Yep. So that's one of the problems that we commonly see, is just this anecdote becomes data. It becomes larger in our decision making than we should give it credit for. The second problem that we see is the assumption, or the gut feeling, that an absence of complaints in a season equals ministry success. Another way that we relate this, Scott, I've said many times when we're talking about vision and unity, that the absence of conflict is equated to unity in the church.
Yeah.
And it almost never is. It's simply because we've not communicated anything clearly enough for people to conflict over it. And so the less we talk about, the less complaining there will be. That is not a good strategy in the church either. We'll just say less, and then the less that people complain about anything, we're better off. But that's just not what we should be driving towards as church leaders.
Or people are really comfortable. I mean,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, nothing to complain about if you're not asking anything of me, you're not pushing me or stretching me in any real way. I'm pretty comfortable. What's to complain about? And so, it's not that no news is good news. Sometimes it's not good news. It just means people stop talking to you.
Yeah.
And that's not always a sign that everything is fine.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Then the third problem that we want to point out, there's a lot of these. This really could have been a very long list, but you know what? You're not interested in listening to us for that long. So we narrowed it down to 3. But the last one is the blind spot of the blanket statement, "I know my church."
Yeah.
You do know your church to an extent.
Right.
Probably not as well as you think you do.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not as well as you're giving yourself credit for.
Mm-hmm.
So you really need to not just have that be your fallback. In fact, I don't know. the next time you think that in your head, something happens, you hear something and you think in your head, I know my church. That should be your clue. I hope it will. You'll think back to that guy on the podcast. But he said the next time I say that to myself, I should pause and dig into the information.
Yeah.
That would be the better reaction to that, instead of just the gut reaction of, I know my people. I know what's going on here. That is incredible information. You should source that out.
Right. Yeah. And things can change,
True.
you know? I don't know, like you've got maybe something that over time you've gotten used to seeing, and I'm trying to think of like a facility example or something. But a wall was once painted out, an exterior wall or whatever, and then over time, like that paint starts to fade, it starts to chip, and any given day that you're walking past it, it doesn't look any different than it did the day before. But if you've not really compared like what this wall looked like when it was painted versus what it looks like today, and it's been 20 years, then it's still true for you to say, well, I know that wall. Yeah, you know the wall because you've walked past it 100 times, 100,000 times, but you're not seeing it clearly because you don't see what it was versus what it is. And so sometimes having a slightly different perspective or inviting somebody who isn't seeing it every day to look at something can give you a different perspective that you might be missing because you know your church.
Mm-hmm.
You're missing something. You're not seeing it for what it is.
Yeah.
And so it's important to kind of keep those things in mind, I think.
Yeah. I mean, Scott, the AI is not terribly unlike the gut feeling. It's given a certain amount of information, and these large language models do essentially like predictive text on steroids. But when it only has this much information, it has this little bundle of information, the pool by which it might predict, the right thing to say is much different than when you feed it tons more information. Better data in the AI model gives better results when a decision or a question is asked of it. And so I think we're kind of the human piece of that. Our gut is kind of like, well, I have some information that I've gathered. And, when I'm faced with something, I'll pull on that. I'll pull from that to react to it. Right. But what if there's something new? What if there's more I could learn first before my reaction takes place?
Absolutely. And we're conditioned with our own set of biases. If you've had a lot of negative experiences with a particular person, then anytime you see that person walk up, you might be inclined to think they're going to complain about something. And they might say something that's totally legitimate, but you interpret that immediately as a criticism, even if what they're saying isn't necessarily critical, or they're not intending to be critical, because now the information that you've been fed from your experiences is this is a negative person with something mean to say, and you're only going to see it through that lens, even if what they might have to say is really helpful. So, there are all kinds of ways that our experiences and our time and our anecdotes and our stories can both help us, but they can also hurt us and keep us from making good decisions and having proper view or an objective view of what's happening in our church. So speaking of objective views, there are 3 questions that we feel like are good starting points for you when you want to start thinking about your church and how can I have a better, more practical, more objective view on what's happening. So AJ, you want to take us through the first one?
Yeah, sure. So the first one is kind of framed around ministry questions, maybe programming questions, something to that effect. But what is it that I believe to be true about this area of ministry in our church? And when did I last verify what I believe to be true about it? So it's a verification question. No matter what has come at you, when have I most recently verified current information about this thing that I'm having to focus on now? And what this is going to do is sort of date stamp this point in time of understanding. And we're not going to be relying on previous or old information or assumptions before making a determination about something, or for planning something new, strategizing differently about an area of ministry. We're going to date stamp it and go, all right, here's what we know is true of it today.
Yeah.
based on information gathering so that we can make a good decision going forward.
Yeah. I mean, this is a small thing, but I mean, a good example of how this sometimes works out is it's like, um, when's the last time that we updated the website? I just updated it last week. And then you go, well, no, actually, it's been 3 months since we updated that web page, since we updated the calendar. And so, you can sometimes have this gap of, I think that this is new, or this is fresh, or this is something that we've looked at, and it's actually been a really long time since we worked on it.
Yeah. Or it was some other third-party add-on tool that you've been doing your updates in, had never checked the website to make sure that connection was still good. And so
Yeah,
you're like,
right.
yes, it's updated every week. No, it's 3 months behind. Oh, I never verified my information. I never verified that tool I was using
Like, that's a really
lost
small
its connection.
ticky-tacky kind of thing, but the same thing
Yeah.
can happen on a large scale. Like, hey,
Yeah.
this ministry is fresh, or this is being really well communicated, but you haven't actually gone and verified that assumption that the thing that you think is happening is actually happening.
Yeah, I mean, so many times this happens in a staff team or, at work, where somebody was supposed to be responsible for something and you're under the assumption they did or had been doing what they were supposed to be doing for some period of time, and then you're asked about it. You're like, oh yeah, sure. Yeah, Bob takes care of that.
Yeah.
So I'll come to find out Bob hadn't been taking care of that, but you didn't have that information. You had
Right.
an assumption that somebody else was doing something. You can your mind can go wild with scenarios that ties into this right here. Let's verify data, not assume.
Yep.
So,
All right, number
right.
2.
You got it, or me?
Go for it.
Who in my church has a different view, and have I actually listened to them or managed them?
Mm.
So, if you are overly sensitive and don't want to receive potentially harsh feedback,
We did an
this is
episode
not
on
the
this.
question for you. You'd better work on this one for yourself.
10 episodes ago.
Yeah,
Go back and listen to what to do when your
Yes.
pastor can't receive feedback.
that's right. Yeah, episode 342. Yeah, you may be carrying assumptions about people's perspectives because you haven't taken the time to meet with them, have coffee, listen to them. Maybe even that person that just gave you such a hard time for such a long time. But yeah, I guess most of these Scots are going to come back to these assumptions. They're all coming back to that gut and not the data. But if you are having a hard time receiving feedback or don't have ways for people to be able to communicate with you, then it's going to be hard for you to have current information and data to make good decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say there are people that sometimes it's easy to just want to avoid talking to them, avoid a conversation, or people that you don't think that their perspective is that valuable, or maybe they're too young, maybe they're too old, maybe they've been here for 30 years and you just don't think that what they've got to say is all that valuable. And sometimes those people just stop talking. They're the ones that they're not saying anything anymore. And I would just encourage you, that's why one of the things that we do in the church ministry analysis process is the comment sections. All those things are anonymous. So people can actually say what needs to be said. And it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
It can be said and it's not going to be traced back to them.
Yeah. Speaking of CMA, our third question, Scott, is very much like a recent CMA that I did with a church. The question is, what does the data say, and does it match my narrative? And this church, if you listened last week, we were talking about metrics, and they're one of the many churches that just don't really track attendance very well. And so, it really was kind of a gut feeling that they had on attendance. And then the next question, also connected to last week's episode about engagement in discipleship. The first number that they pulled out was twice the number of their attendance. And I was like, okay, this is possible that you've got twice as many people in that area of ministry than you do attending church. Is that what you're telling me? And they're like, definitely not. Like, okay, so let's talk about the numbers some more then. And it came down to just trying to interpret information that wasn't very reliable to make a determination about something. But in the end, at least it showed them how important it was to start getting reliable data, because they were struggling to be able to put the information together to, come away with a really clear picture of the current state of the church and how to strategize towards growth again. So we have to compare the data to what our gut feeling is, or what the narrative is in our mind about the data, so that we can really get to the bottom of it. And it's just super important.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's again why we have this church ministry analysis thing happening right now. If you go to malphursgroup.com/CMA90 and get signed up for that, it's $9.99, $9.99, so $10. And go through this process, get some objective outside eyes, and start to ask the right questions. If for no other reason, verify your assumptions. A lot of churches, a lot of pastors come away from the church ministry analysis going, I thought that this might be true. Maybe sometimes it's something that you think might be true that you don't want to say out loud, and you just want to verify and go, I've been wondering if this has been a problem. Now I know it is, so I can work on it. Or maybe you walk away from it going, hey, this is something I thought we were doing well in, and turns out we are doing well in it. And that's good to validate. So it's not like every assumption that you have about your church is definitely wrong. Mm-hmm. It might be right, but how do you know? How do you know that your assumptions are right? And that's the question, and you can get that answered for $10. So definitely a worthwhile investment for you.
Yep. Get the data. Don't get the gut. Don't keep growing the gut. Grow the data.
That's just right. Don't stop growing your gut.
AJ's fitness tip of the day.
There you go. The athlete that you are.
All right, everybody. Thanks for being with us. We hope that you do gather the data, dig into it, so that you can make great decisions for your church. We'll be back with you again next week on the Church Revitalization Podcast.